You know that I've been on to you from the start, and not once did you pull the wool over this boy's eyes. You come in here and you sprinkle the place with powder and you spray perfume and you stick a paper lantern over the light bulb, and lo and behold, the place is turning to Egypt, and you are the queen of the Nile, sitting on your throne, swilling down my liquor, and you know what I say? Ha ha!
In the middle of the 1950s, actors like Marlon Brando, James Dean, and Montgomery Clift were understood to represent something totally new in acting for the American cinema. Their style was emotionally driven.
She wouldn't said that. I can just say that way. I know it's true, but why?
Explosive.
Mom, a kid was killed tonight. I don't see how I can get out of that by pretending that it didn't happen.
And was perceived to contain greater complexity than the performances of their peers. It soon became known that these actors had all internalized variations on the same method, all of which had been pioneered decades earlier. A revolution in performance for the cinema, both for directors and actors, had been brewing since the earliest days of motion pictures on the stage of experimental theaters in Russia. Constantin Stanislavski was working in Moscow as an actor and director at a time of great change and innovation. Throughout the 19th century, popular performance in the theater was often represented by formal categories like vaudeville, opera, melodrama, and musicals. What all of these forms had in common was a broad illustrative performative style. The nature of the actor's craft was thought to be one in which the ideas in the text would be embodied by the performer in a grandiose, symbolic fashion. Theater was a space where storytelling was always bigger than life. Whether it was the broad comedy of vaudeville or the operatic intrigue of melodrama, the actor was seen as a physical embodiment of emotions and ideas. The expectation was that the actor's craft was one of communicative clarity, learning what gestures, what methods of vocal articulation would allow the clear and transparent embodiment of dramatic expressions. Towards the close of the 19th century, a new trend started to emerge in Russian theater that inspired young actors and directors. Bucking the norm of centuries of theatrical presentation, this crazy idea called realism began to come onto the scene. In a realist theater, actors and directors began to dig into some of the underlying assumptions about the symbolic structure of performance.
You know what some of these writers do? They just drop off and lay there like they were stone dead. Not me, boy. I don't fake nothing.
Why would we assume certain forms or habits of the actor are the most truthful ways to illustrate ideas? After all, the way we individually navigate the world is so much more internal, much quieter, and much more ruminative. The key leader of this revolution was Constantin Stanislavski. Stanislavski identified the conception of performance that had preceded realism as the art of representation. In constructing an alternative approach, he sought out not only a new set of symbols, but a totally new methodology through which we could think about the actor's craft. Stanislavski described his system as the art of experiencing.
And I think Wordsworth means that when we grow up, that we have to forget the ideals of youth.
The obsession of this new method is focusing on the actor as a heightened emotional animal, one who aspires towards forgetting that they are not the character they are representing.
You say one thing, he says another, and everybody changes back again!
And in this craft of forgetting, the emphasis becomes emotionally truthful reactions and experiences.
And my wife is sitting there looking at me, and I feel like I'm a million miles from her, and I know that there's something wrong, that I can't keep living like this, that there's gotta be something more to love than commitment. But then I think that I might have given up on the whole idea of romantic love, that I might have put it to bed that day when you weren't there.
Suddenly, performance stopped being about transparent representation and became about complex shades of vulnerability.
Well, I'm your mama, ain't I?
It became about being subtext, and the subconscious were now more fully invited to be represented by the performer, exciting a revolution not only in how actors staged their scenes, but in how writers and directors thought about the whole endeavor of telling stories through drama.
Would you like to come visit me this Sunday?
Yes.
What a strange girl you are.
Why?
Flung out of space.
To Stanislavski, the lifeblood of a performance was the honest emotional experience of the actor.
When a thing is important, I tell the truth. And this is the truth. I never cheated my sister, or you, or anyone else on earth as long as I lived.
Inevitably, every performance represented a mixture of formal practice and honest emotional experience, but performance was at its best when it was spontaneous, when it was lived in, and when it accurately represented the specific human character of the narrative.
Terry, take this job, please.
Charlie.
Please take it.
Charlie.
Stanislavski documented the many methods and techniques he pioneered in books such as The Actor Prepares, Building a Character, and Creating a Role. Teachers like Lee Strasberg, Stella Adler, and Sanford Meisner all adapted and expanded parts of Stanislavski's system in American theater schools. Teaching a new generation of students this approach to the craft of performance led to a whole new wave of method actors.
I figured that he must have got you mixed up, but he goes in and out of Oriole all the time, so he can check and clear on any mistake.
Whose ambitions would bring them to the cinema.
I couldn't help myself. I couldn't.
Stanislavski and realism became a part of the DNA of that cinema. And while there are still many types of films and many types of performative styles which thrive in the garden of moving pictures, realism rests supreme. And perhaps, more critically, the way that we fundamentally read a performance, judge its character, and think about directing it, has become inextricably linked to Stanislavski's view that a good performance is grounded in the emotional reality of the actor's embodied experience. For generations, directors and actors had accepted the nature of performance as it had been presented to them. Stanislavski wasn't satisfied with the status quo. He wanted to understand why a performance could feel truthful some of the time and false others.
Stop making those awful faces!
Stop acting!
If we endeavor to tell stories, we must be bold enough to take a position on what we think is underneath it all. What is at the core of our craft? Only from that position of first principles can we push ourselves further and try to forge ahead in a frontier of yet unasked questions. To understand these foundations is to ask those same questions Stanislavski asked. What is a performance? Why does it move us? And how might we guide actors toward a greater sense of the truth?